So as warmer spring weather is approaching across most of the country, a lot of you are going to be getting out into your lawns and you're going to be asking me about grub treatment options for 2025. And that's what today's video is all about. So I typically get this question and it comes from two different angles. The most common here early in the season, it's folks like you or me that are getting out and you're digging around in the lawn. Maybe you're adding some French drains like I did here yesterday. I dug all this by hand yesterday and I'm paying for it a little bit right now. But either way, as I was digging, I did find a couple of grubs, but I'm not really too concerned. And then the other more common question about grubs, it comes when the growing season is in full swing, usually in say later March or early April, and you find brown spots in the lawn. I see this all too often. People post up in my group something like this. And so what happened here is he saw brown spots and he threw down a grub killer twice, thinking that may have been what caused it. In reality, this is gray leaf spot disease, and so the grub killer was wasted time and money and is an unnecessary use of pesticides. Now, I'm not coming down on you for this. If you've done this, I see this dozens of times per year. My goal today is to educate you on grubs and their life cycle so that you can prevent them, or if they do get in your lawn, you can kill them quickly. Now, to be sure, grubs, they can destroy an entire lawn in just a couple weeks. They can be a serious problem for lawns up north and down south. So it's important to treat for them, but you want to use the right product at the right time to first off get the right result, but second to be responsible about your use of hard controls like insecticides that we use against grubs and other insects in the lawn. And so before we go any further with this video, let's understand the life cycle of grubs, because that's going to open up some important windows of understanding.
All right, y'all, real quick, let's go through this. Let's look at the lifestyle of grubs. You can see here, life cycle. You can see who you've got here. The months of the year, this is where we are in April, but let's go right here to June. These beetles are often called May-June beetles or June bugs because they come out in June. You'll find them in your pool filter, or definitely you'll find them on your porch lights. What they do is all during that month of June and in July, they lay eggs in the lawns, well-watered lawns, and those eggs hatch into small grubs that feed on grass roots to grow. As they feed on grass roots, they get larger and larger, and then when it starts to get cold, depending on where you live, they will go down deep for the winter, and then they're down there, and then as we get to the spring where we are now, they come back up. This is, what is this, a pupae stage right here, and they're about to hatch here. There is a little feeding that might go on right in here, then they hatch and they go. I'm not typically worried about the feeding that goes on in here because your grass is growing so vigorously, you usually won't notice it, but some feeding can happen, and then they launch out, and now the cycle starts all over. So that's how it works. This is why we're gonna put a preventative down right here, right in this range here. Let's just ruin this drawing. We're gonna put a preventative down right in there somewhere, right? So when they get to this point, we've got that preventative down protecting us all during this point.
So right now, I'm making this video, it's March, and that means that the grubs I found when digging the other day, they're going to be emerging as adults in another couple of months. Typically, grubs, they don't do too much damage in the spring. They mostly damage lawns starting in later summer and into the fall time, but some damage can still occur here in the spring. So the next thing to consider is, did they actually do any damage? So looking at this mostly neglected area of my backyard, I see no visible damage. And that's because it's spring, as I mentioned, but mostly it's because there just aren't enough of them. Finding a couple two-tree grubs, even a half dozen grubs, doesn't mean you're going to see any actual damage to the turf itself. Sure, they do munch on the roots, but the grass just recovers from it because there aren't enough of them. And so in this case, there's just no need to waste the chemical. Even if you're watching this video and it's, say, September or October, and you dig up a couple, if you're not seeing any visible damage for them, don't apply the chemical. This is an example of IPM, or Integrated Pest Management. It's a responsible way to manage your turf grass crop. The IPM approach, it states that you're only going to use the hard control, in this case an insecticide, when the pest populations reach a point where visible harm comes to your crop. Our crop is turf grass, and because there's no visible damage, I see no need to apply the chemical. Now back to the other example above from the Facebook post. This guy actually did have some damage to his grass, and there may be a time this season where you also run into a strange brown spot in your lawn and you're wondering, could this be from grubs? Well, the good news here is that grubs, they're slow. They don't crawl away or fly away, which means you can easily dig around in your brown spot to verify if they are actually the culprit, or maybe it could be something else. Okay, and so the rule here is if you find a brown spot and you suspect it might be grubs, the first thing you do is you get down and dig. If you dig in a few areas and you don't find grubs, then now you've just confirmed this damage is not from grubs, so there's no need to waste the chemical. Once again, this is part of using, or in this case, not using pesticides responsibly. Now, real quick, I'm gonna give you some really cool information on grub treatments, but before I do, I wanted to make sure you got a hold of my pre-emergent guide that I wrote. We talked about pre-emergent applications in the last video where I mentioned crabgrass, signal grass, and other invading grassy weeds. These grassy weeds, they can destroy your lawn in the summer, but you can easily prevent them with a pre-emergent application called prodiamine. I'll give you a link to prodiamine in the description below, along with a link to the free PDF guide that I wrote that gives you all the details along with an introduction to my soil temperature-based strategy. This strategy has helped tens of thousands of homeowners eliminate their crabgrass problem. It's a free download PDF on Google Drive, and it looks great on mobile or desktop. Your first step to a nice lawn this season is playing defense. And prodiamine pre-emergent is your go-to treatment option, and I have shipping right to your door. And speaking of offense and defense, let's get back out there and learn a little bit more about grubs in the lawn. And so it is okay to treat for grubs, but we need to talk about the difference of a curative versus a preventative. Now, so far in this video, I've been talking about curative applications. You found grubs, they're in high enough numbers that you do indeed need to apply insecticide to save your lawn. As mentioned earlier and illustrated in the life cycle section, this curative treatment is typically going to be a late summer or early fall application. In that case, you want to buy a product that is labeled as a 24-hour grub killer. This is what you'll find in most big box stores, and its active ingredient, trichloroform. The professional version of this goes under the brand name Dilox. This is exactly the same product, just branded under Bio Advanced. Now, if you do find grubs, treat the entire lawn, not just the spots that are damaged. Be sure to water it in right away. Now, the dead grass, it's not going to come back to life, so you'll need to reseed or drop some solder plugs, but it should stop more damage from occurring. Some additional info you may be interested to know: trichloroform is also great at killing sod webworm, armyworm, and works decently on mole cricket as well. It'll also kill nuisance pests like ants, fleas, and spiders and ticks, but it's not the best for them long-term because it has very little residual activity. And what I mean by that is it doesn't last long. It's a contact kill, and it's non-effective after just a couple of days. It does its job, and it does it well, and then it's done. So it isn't a preventative or anything like that. It's just a quick kill when you're under attack. And so now let's talk about preventative treatments. Remember back in the life cycle part, I talked about grubs get late in the lawn in June and July, and so you want to get your preventative application down before that time. The best preventative active ingredient on the market today is called chlorantranelyprol. Now, you'll see this branded as acelepryn in professional formulations, and you can get this in granular or liquid concentrate, and you mix it in your sprayer and spray it as a liquid application. And you'll also see it branded under the name Scott's GRUBS in big box stores for homeowners. GRUBS is a granular product and is exactly the same as the granular brand of acelepryn. Now, if you're wondering which one is better, liquid or granular, I can tell you that they both work the same. So whichever one you are most comfortable applying, that's the one that's going to work the best for you. When it comes to preventative treatments for grubs, getting the product applied properly and at the right rate is the most important factor, not the delivery method of the liquid or granular. Now, most of you watching this, you're going to prefer granular, and that's the Scott's GRUBS in most cases because it's the most easily accessible. It's recommended to apply this anytime in April. Now, chlorantranelyprol, Scott's GRUBS, it'll protect your lawn for around 4 months, but keep in mind, it doesn't actually keep the grubs from getting into your lawn. The June bugs can still lay the eggs in the lawn and they can grow up, but what it does do is it keeps them from doing any damage to the lawn when they try to feed. This is important because this happens too. You apply your Scott's GRUBS in April, and then say you're out there in July in the lawn doing a project, you're digging around, and you find a couple 2-tree grubs, there's no need to apply a curative. You apply preventative, so rest assured you're covered. So let me reiterate here. Grub preventative applications don't keep the beetles from actually laying eggs in your lawn. What they do is they keep those grubs from feeding and causing damage. Now, that's an important distinction once again, because I don't want you thinking that you need to go out there and blanket the earth with more chemicals. Once you buy and properly apply, your lawn is protected. Trust the process. So let me give you some interesting facts about active ingredient chlorantranelyprol. So it's a systemic insecticide, which means it's taken into the plant through the roots and translocated so that when grubs begin to feed, they come in contact with the chemical. This is why it's very important that you water in your Scott's GRUBS with 1 inch of water to get it down to where it can be activated. It has low toxicity to mammals, birds, and beneficial insects like bees, making it a favored choice over older chemistries we used to use in the past. Chlorantraniliprole is a group 28 insecticide known as anthracnonic diamides. These synthetic compounds, they target insect muscle function. And in the case of grubs, we're mostly referring to the muscles that control the mouth parts, the literal munching. The muscles, they require a signal to move, like a switch that kind of turns on and off. And this switch, it's controlled by calcium, which acts like a jolt of energy, telling the muscles when to flex and when to relax. So when the insect, in this case the grub, when it comes in contact with the chlorantraniliprole, it kind of attaches itself to a part of the insect's muscle called the ryanodine receptor. Think of this receptor as like a calcium gatekeeper. Normally, the gate opens briefly to let calcium out for a muscle squeeze and then closes so the muscle can relax. The chlorantraniliprole, it kind of jams the gate open, letting the calcium just flood out and stay out. With too much calcium pushed out, the insect's muscles, they get stuck in a flex mode and they cramp up and they can't relax. It's like if you kind of flexed your arm really, really hard and you didn't let it go, eventually you're gonna burn out. And in the case of grubs, their mouth parts, they're stuck open indefinitely. The grub can't eat, so it dies, which means they immediately stop feeding on the roots of your grass.
What would you little maniacs like to do first?
Chlorantraniliprole works by direct contact of the insect, hitting it directly, or by the insect ingesting it when it munches on the grass roots treated with it. So the good news here is that the Scott's GrubX, it can be used as both a preventative and a curative, although I still prefer Dilox or trichloroform as a curative just because it's a little cheaper and it does work a little bit faster. Lastly, active ingredient chlorantraniliprole, it kills and prevents other insects too. It's really good at killing and preventing sod webworm, armyworm, and remember, this product does have residual activity, protecting your lawn from these listed damaging insects for up to 4 months. Now keep in mind, the key to success with chlorantraniliprole Scott's GrubX is it does have to be watered in with 1 inch of water. So get out there and take your tuna can test. That's it for this one, y'all. Hope you learned a little something. As always, leave your comments and questions below. Hit the like button and subscribe while you're down there, and I'll see you in the lawn.